Hello folks and welcome back. We are here for round number 5 of Stockholm Regional Championships VGC 2025. The first few rounds that we've seen have been pretty exciting with some fun back and forths. And for once today, we have a mirror match. We have Maynard versus Rahim Farzan here. This is a pretty exciting matchup. We get to see a couple of different archetypes of Calyrex Ice Rider. Over here for Maynard, this has been a little bit closer to some of the more standard stuff we've seen from Calyrex Ice Rider recently. Glacial Lance, High Horsepower, Trick Room, Protect with the Clear Amulet, and Terra Water. Farigiraf is another Trick Room setter with Psychic, Foul Play, Helping Hand, and obviously that Trick Room. It is wearing the safety goggles here. Landorus, Incarnate, Sheer Force, Earth Power, Stance, Storm, Sludge Bomb, Protect, and the Life Form. Notably Terra Water, a little bit more defensive, very similar to what won San Antonio Regional Championships with the Tang Gang. Urshifu with the Terra Water Choice Scarf. Again, that's been seeing a lot more popularity, but coaching is the choice here with U-Turn, Close Combat, and Surging Strikes. Ogerpon, Cornerstone here, Agricultural Power with Follow Me and Spiky Shield for a little bit more physical damage. Raging Bolt with Terra Bug Assault Vest, Draco Meteor, Thunderbolt, Thunderclap, and Electro Web. So this Calyrex and Farigiraf team here, a little bit more modal, has some additional options alongside the Trick Room, but is pretty focused around this pretty bulky, high-powered Ice-type attacker. Urshifu and Ogerpon are some additional physical damage, although Ogerpon has a little bit more utility with Follow Me, as well as Spiky Shield dealing a little bit of recoil damage to contact moves. Landorus and Raging Bolt are the main special attackers here, although Farigiraf can definitely not be counted out with Psychic and Foul Play, both being able to do quite a bit. I wouldn't be surprised to see quite a bit of Landorus in this matchup. Terra Water here is pretty solid, especially as we see what Rahim Farzan is bringing here in just a second. Like I said, it is a Calyrex Ice Rider mirror, but this is something that we've seen get a lot more popular recently, which is an extremely hard Trick Room team. So Calyrex and Indeedee. Calyrex is Glacial Lance Close Combat Trick Room Protect with Terra Fire here in Clear Amulet. Indeedee is Terra Fairy with Psychic Surge, Rocky Helmet, also a lot of chip damage, great against Urshifu Rapid Strikes, Psychic, Follow Me, Helping Hand, and Trick Room. And then Torkoal is a much more common pairing that we've been seeing with Calyrex. Eruption, Heatwave, Earth Power, Weather Ball, and this is a Choice Specs Terrafire Torkoal. Those eruptions and Trick Room can be doing a ton of work. It is a Dark Urshifu here with Wicked Blow, Close Combat, Sucker Punch, and Ironhead. This is Choice Band, so both Urshifus scarfed in this matchup with that Terra Grass. Smeargle here is an additional support option. Decorate can buff up both Torkoal and Calyrex. Fake Out Spore and Follow Me, and then Raging Bolt as well to round this out. This is a Safety Goggles Terra Electric one, though, with Thunderbolt, Draco Meteor, Thunderclap, and Protect. So the big thing here for Rahim is that Calyrex and Torkoal are both going to be your primary damage dealers. Smeargle and Indeedee have a lot of supportive options, and then if you want to be outside of an incredibly hard Trick Room mode, you have things like Urshifu and Raging Bolt to bring. If you are Rahim here, I think a hard Trick Room mode might be pretty favorable to you. Once you can get that up, Torkoal can get a lot of work done. The main thing that Torkoal has to worry about is opposing Landorus, which Calyrex can deal with, unless there is a terrestrialization. That Terra Water Landorus is a pretty big threat for Rahim. That might be the big obstacle that he has to overcome. And for Matt, trying to figure out ways to maneuver after that Landorus goes down, or making sure that that Landorus is protected going into this matchup, I think those might be the pretty big things to look out for. At the same time here, I am definitely looking for Rahim to try to lead with that Smeargle and get Trick Room set up with either Indeedee or Calyrex earlier into this game. If you're Maynard, you want to try to figure out a way to either stop Trick Room from going up or to maneuver around it. Leading with your Calyrex or Farigiraf of your own to potentially reverse Trick Room is not out of the question. So coming into game number 1 here, I'm interested to see what the leads are. It is the Smeargle and the Calyrex for Rahim, and it is the Landorus and the Ogerpon for Maynard here. So Landorus, quite a bit of pressure here. Calyrex should be able to do all right here. It is a little bit worried about the Ivy Cudgel from the Cornerstone Ogerpon, but this Smeargle is quite a threat. It can guarantee that this Calyrex stays up for at least one turn. That could give Rahim the opportunity to go for a Trick Room here, or just try to go for some outright damage and call Matt on the bluff that Landorus will not terrestrialize this turn. Again, that Landorus is in very rough spot as long as it is still that ground and flying type, but for Rahim and Matt, it's a little bit of a game of chicken to see which option both players go for. Again, no really wrong choices here from either player. It is simply a guess, a read into seeing what happens. If you are Matt, if you go for, so we see the Spiky Shield, if you don't go for the terrestrialization here and Rahim goes for a Trick Room, you're in a really good spot. Fake Out is going into that Ogerpon with the Spiky Shield, so that is going to be the Focus Sash broken for Smeargle now. That's going to be pretty big going into the later stages of this game. Sandsear Storm comes out. That might just take out, oh, it doesn't hit the Smeargle. That's pretty big. It does a decent amount of damage into the Shadow, or into the Ice Rider rather, and Glacial Lance is what comes through. So Landorus does go down on this turn. Well, almost certainly goes down on this turn. Yeah, it's not very bulky. Even if you give it some additional stats and HP and defense, that thing is still going down. But Notably, this Calyrex might just be in IV Cudgel range, and it also cannot terrasilize. A lot of times with Calyrex, one of the reasons Terra Water is so good is that you are no longer that worried about the potential Cornerstone Ogerpon IV Cudgel. That is very, very big. It's a pretty big threat. And for Rahim, going for that Terra Fire, that just still puts you in a pretty bad spot up against this Ogerpon. Now, Smeargle is still on the field. It's not a guarantee that Ivy Cudgel takes out Calyrex. Again, it is a very defensively bulky Pokemon in all senses of the word, and Matt is currently trying to figure out how he wants to navigate the rest of this game. Being down Landorus is definitely not a fun place to be, especially if there is still a Torkoal in the back. That said, Matt does have Terastallization saved on both these Pokemon, and Ogerpon with an Ivy Cudgel can still do a decent amount to that Torkoal, as well as high horsepower here on the Calyrex. Now, for Rahim, not having the Trick Room up yet, it is likely that Rahim's Calyrex is slower than Matt's. Matt does obviously still have 2 Trick Room Pokemon, just like Rahim, or 2 Pokemon that can set Trick Room, just like Rahim does, but Rahim has a lot more Pokemon that are dedicated to that Trick Room slot. I won't be surprised if Matt does have that Trick Room as just essentially another option, and so has some speed points invested into this Calyrex. If you're Rahim, you're probably more likely to know if your Calyrex is slower, and so that's going to determine where we see these next few turns going. We do see Smeargle go for the Follow Me here. I think the worry, though, is that Glacial Lance can take out that Smeargle either way, but Ivy Cudgel is going to be going into that slot. That should take it down relatively cleanly. I'm interested to see what Matt is going for. Glacial Lance or High Horsepower. I think High Horsepower probably has more damage, but Glacial Lance comes through here. Single target move. Actually, this probably does more damage, especially with a single target, and it does about a quarter of the Calyrex's HP. Glacial Lance going through on the other side now. This will break Ogerpon sturdy and take it down to that single HP, and does about 25% to the opposing Calyrex as well. So, notably, again, still could be a speed tie, but I'm leaning towards Matt's Calyrex being the faster of the two. I gotta learn what some of these names are, but we see Dark type Urshifu, single strike Urshifu making an appearance. Now, for Matt, you can certainly go for the Follow Me with Ogerpon, and then you get to guarantee that a Wicked Blow will not be going into your Calyrex, although you might have to worry about, that's the main thing you'd be worrying about, is a potential Wicked Blow. And for Matt, right now, you want to be able to get rid of this Urshifu as fast as possible, so getting damage out with that Glacial Lance is going to be pretty big. I'm interested to see what the 4th Pokemon is for Rahim. It looks like Rahim was not going for that hard Trick Room mode, was just trying to get that damage out earlier. So Smeargle going down, Calyrex not going for Trick Room right off the bat is pretty telling there for Matt. So going into game 2, that is definitely some knowledge to keep in the bag. We do see the Terastallization coming out here. I do believe this is for Matt, going for Terra Water onto that Calyrex that removes both its dark and fighting weaknesses. Again, it's still pretty bulky, but Choice Band Urshifu does a lot of damage, so that might not be enough to keep it alive, even with resisting the Glacial Lances coming out here. And we do see Rahim's Calyrex going for that Protect here. That is pretty big. Are we going to see the Follow Me? No, it is a Power Whip. That does quite a bit of damage into that Urshifu. Wicked Blow is going to come out and does just go straight for the Ogerpon. So Ogerpon falls, but Matt's Calyrex is going to be able to get a Glacial Lance off here. I don't know if this is going to do enough damage to KO the Urshifu. It is a pretty, it has decent bulk here, but I doubt it's I doubt it has too many stats trained into it, but it goes down nevertheless. The Power Whip, a great call from Matt there. Very, very intelligent, pairing that with the Terastallization, all but guaranteeing that the Calyrex would at least survive the Wicked Blow, and that Power Whip getting Urshifu into range. So Matt Maynard bringing out the Raging Bolt to round things out here. Squirtle is an interesting name, and it is indeed the Torkoal that's still coming out. That is incredibly interesting for me that Rahim does not go for Trick Room earlier in this game, knowing that Torkoal is in the back, because right now Torkoal is going to have a really rough time dealing with both Calyrex and Raging Bolt with that Assault Vest on. Matt's Calyrex can simply go for high horsepower into the Torkoal. You have Draco Meteor as a potential option for Matt on the Raging Bolt. There's a lot of damage that Matt is packing right now that is simply going to outpace anything that Rahim can do, and so that might be a pretty safe lock into game number 2, assuming we don't have any big misses. For Rahim, I think the main thing you have to worry about is a potential miss. I think you have to lock into Earth Power, as Torkoal, Eruption, and Heat Wave just don't do enough damage here. You have to try to address this Raging Bolt, I think, as fast as possible. You have to hope maybe that some combination of Earth Power plus Close Combat is enough to take out Matt's Calyrex, but we will have to see. We see the Terastallization coming out for Rahim here, and it is going to be the Terra Fire on the Torkoal, so maybe trying to max out the Heat Wave here could be an option. I'd be shocked if we see Eruption. I wouldn't be surprised if Matt is getting a lot of damage into that. It is a double protect on Rahim's Calyrex here, so if there is a potential double up into Rahim's Calyrex, that could be it, but it's a Thunderbolt into the Torkoal, takes it down into extremely low HP. Glacial Lance comes out. That should be enough to take out the Torkoal. So even with the Terastallization, Rahim unable to get the turtle to do much in this game, and that should be all she wrote for game number 1. I'm interested to see if Rahim wants to try to play this out, maybe get some calculations with these last couple of moves here, but as the adjustment for Rahim, again, like I said at the beginning, I think going for a harder Trick Room mode would probably be your best bet here. From what we've seen, Rahim's Calyrex is the slower of the two. And for the most part, with Torkoal being in the back, Eruption Torkoal still feels really good, right? It's still going to do a lot of damage in the sun, even if Calyrex and Raging Bolt both have a lot of good defenses against it, especially with Calyrex Terastallizing. And Torkoal does, again, the Torkoal does have to worry about Landorus. It does have to worry about Ivy Cudgel, but it's Choice Specs Eruption with Terrifier in the sun is so much damage. And if you can get your Calyrex to follow up with Glacial Lances or close combats afterwards, I think that would put potentially Rahim in a very good spot. But Rahim has to get to that spot. We see Thunderbolt really cleanly take care of that Calyrex Ice Rider on Rahim's side. And so Matt Maynard, with a little bit more of a standard Calyrex team, standard in, that is what we saw for most of Regulation G up until recently, taking game number 1 there. For Rahim, I think, or for Matt rather, I think you just kind of stick with the same stuff. It felt pretty good. Landorus going, like sacrificing Landorus early felt a little bit bold for me initially, but seeing Ivy Cudgel, seeing how much damage Thunderbolt did from the Raging Bolt, it makes a decent amount of sense. Even with Torkoal being relatively tanky, it still went down without Landorus being too much of a present threat, and it allowed Matt to defensively terrastallize that Calyrex, which definitely played a pretty big role in that game. So that being said, I'm interested to see adjustments for Rahim going into game number 2 here. Once again, we see the Calyrex and the Smeargle. The big thing for Rahim is that this lead doesn't really reveal what's in the back, but Matt brings the same too. So for Matt, you now have put on a little bit of conditioning where Rahim doesn't know if you're going to terastallize this Landorus or not. Matt did get to see that the Calyrex went for Glacial Lance in the previous turn, or in the previous game. So does Landorus terastallize here, go for a bit of a different move? We don't make the sacrifice play, and instead we try to get that max damage out. Ogerpon did go for this, the Spiky Shield before, so Rahim might want to be a little bit wary of that, potentially fake out into the Landorus, but then you do put your Calyrex at risk of an Ivy Cudgel. If Rahim is wanting to get Trick Room up, obviously, again, now is the time. You can guarantee that Calyrex stays up on this turn by fake out into either of these Pokemon. Again, if you're Rahim, you're a little bit more scared of that Spiky Shield. So Follow Me is what comes through for the Smeargle instead here. That is another move that will still ensure that Calyrex stays up. Ivy Cudgel goes through, that'll at least break the Focus Sash, and it does bring it down all the way to that 1 HP on the Smeargle here. Notably, no Terastallization again for Matt. He was thinking about it, but didn't follow through. The Smeargle does go down to a Sancier Storm here, does hit this time. So Smeargle falls. What is this Calyrex going for this time? So far, it's been a relatively similar set to game number 1 so far, except the Smeargle is down, Trick Room comes up, and now Rahim does get to bring in a Pokemon for relatively free. So with Trick Room up, a little bit of damage onto the Ice Rider, and Urshifu makes its appearance onto the battlefield. So Landorus now feels pretty good. It's still alive and well, but it is pressured by the Glacial Lance. That said, it can still terastallize, and Urshifu now has to contend with Follow Me on the Ogerpon. Sturdy is still activated. At the very least, a Glacial Lance from this Calyrex will break Ogerpon Sturdy, and that should allow Urshifu to take it down from there. But Landorus is a pretty big threat now. Going for a defensive terastallization should allow it to survive a Glacial Lance, maybe a close combat, likely a close combat. Another Sancier Storm, even an Earth Power or Sludge Bomb, is going to be able to do a considerable amount of damage to either of these Pokemon for Rahim. So Trick Room is up. This was the other option, that essentially this is the other path that Rahim could have taken going on that first turn. I think Fake Out might still have been a better choice, maybe, but we're going to have to see how that plays out in the long run here. We see the Terra Water coming out for the Landorus for Matt. This is going to be the pivotal turn here. How much damage does this Landorus do? How much damage does the Calyrex do? Follow Me comes through from the Ogerpon as expected. We're going to see this Glacial Lance move first, though. What comes out? Glacial Lance comes through. Landorus is going to resist it. Ogerpon, we know, goes down to 1 HP, and Landorus only takes about 56 damage, 58 damage there, about a third of its HP, and stays pretty sturdy. Wicked Blow comes through onto the Ogerpon and takes it down. A big critical hit. Now, Landorus, how much damage can it do to the Urshifu? I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sandstorm Storm again. It is going to be the Earth Power, though. Takes the Urshifu down into the red, but doesn't KO it. Now, Matt gets to bring in either Calyrex or Raging Bolt, both of which should underspeed this opposing Urshifu. Notably, Matt's Calyrex, again, should be faster in terms of stats, so I believe Rahim's Calyrex should still get to move first inside of Trick Room here. That said, we know this Landorus is not going down on this turn just from the Calyrex, so and Rahim is also locked into Wicked Blow. Sucker Punch is not an option. If it was, that would be a pretty darn good slot right here. Unfortunately, that choice band feels pretty good. Now, Rahim can still go for Protect on Calyrex. There's a world where maybe you switch into the Torkoal, but you're still really worried that it will just take too much damage from a potential Glacial Lance here. And if Matt makes a really good read, or actually not even a read, there's a pretty safe world here where Matt clicks Glacial Lance and Earth Power on the Landorus into that Urshifu slot. Urshifu should go down to a Glacial Lance, and then if this exact situation plays out where Torkoal is coming in, ooh, this is a different Pokemon here. It is Indeedee that makes its way onto the battlefield. Psychic Terrain coming out. There is not going to be any priority here. We see the Glacial Lance comes through. Landorus is going to take about another third. Calyrex only takes 40-some damage. Not nearly enough. Matt gets a Glacial Lance off of his own. Takes his Indeedee down below half HP. It is a critical hit on the opposing Calyrex as well. Earth Power comes through onto the Indeedee as well and takes it down. That's a pretty, quite frankly, that is a pretty safe play from Matt there, because Urshifu is going to be going down to a Glacial Lance, and if there is a swap that Urshifu wouldn't go down to, that Earth Power can instead wipe it out. And if it does KO Urshifu, then it just gets to go into the opposing Calyrex. So Landorus still on the field. It does go down to a Glacial Lance here. You can go for Protect for Matt, or you can swap out. I believe there's only 1 or 2 more turns of Trick Room, so Matt can definitely play around that and get Landorus into a pretty safe spot to close out the game. That said, Rahim still not feeling. Oh, man, I was gonna try to cope for Rahim here, but I think that this is going to be the end of the game. I don't remember if we saw Sucker Punch. I believe it is U-Turn and Coaching are the last, or actually, I quite frankly don't remember if Urshifu has Sucker Punch. I'm sure it does. Landorus goes for the Protect, though. We don't see a Sucker Punch come through. Well, there's Psychic Terrain anyways that Rahim set, so I doubt there would be. Glacial Lance, though, from Rahim into Matt. The Calyrex, again, still not taking nearly enough damage. Hey, it's a critical hit, but that's not going to be enough at the end of the day. Urshifu is going to fall for Rahim, and that should be all she wrote. So Matt Maynard setting up 3 Pokemon to 1. This should be it, and yet another pretty clean 2-0 here on stream here for Stockholm. So we've seen a lot of these Torkoal teams do pretty well, but Landorus just feels like a great answer into it. I say as Landorus is falling, but in the long run here, I believe Matt should have the victory locked up. Landorus falls. Matt is going to get a Glacial Lance off here. That is a +1. That is a +1 to Rahim's Calyrex, but unfortunately, this last Glacial Lance takes things down. So that match is pretty interesting. I always enjoy seeing restricted archetypes that are the same restricted going in 2 different directions. Matt, like I said, Matt's team is less built around Trick Room. Obviously, it's still an option. Calyrex and Farigiraf both have it, but you have Landorus, you have Raging Bolt, you have Pokemon that can operate in or out of Trick Room perfectly fine. They do not need it up. It's not the main factor of the team. So when you come up against something that is very Trick Room dependent, when you have something like a Calyrex Torkoal mode on your team, and that's what a lot of it's going to be built around, it's interesting to see how that interaction works, right? We've seen a lot of success from the Calyrex Torkoals over the course of the last couple of tournaments, especially in the online tournaments, if you take a look at those. And so that feels pretty good, but it does seem like, at least the way that this played out, Matt had a pretty strong advantage. The Landorus there just really tidying things up. But until next time, y'all, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.